Hi guys, this is Michelle, Deception Bytes, and it is Friday, March 9th, and it's 11:12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I wanted to pick up from where we left off with the Q post, but first I wanted to apologize to my regular listeners because the last time I posted was on Monday, and I posted about the four booms and the Hillary and the Clinton Foundation. So I have been out of town in Ottawa for some medical appointments, and I did not mean to be away this long. But at any rate, it's a long story, and I won't get into that. But I'm back, and I do want to get caught up with these. I will probably not be able to catch up. Well, I won't be able to catch up in one video. There's no way. It may take two, it may take three. I see that Q is out there busily posting. So I'm going to get us caught up today, and no matter how many videos it takes, I'm going to get us caught up today. So again, I apologize for being away that many days. It's unusual, and it really couldn't be helped. But anyway, let's get started. Now, March 5th, Q wrote, "At Snowden." Then he writes, "Welcome to China. Border crossing, /3. Spartans in darkness. Q." Now, when I first saw this, I was like, what? But it does all start to make sense here. Now, what if he crossed the border into China? Well, apparently he did. Now, to understand all this and where this is coming from, let's look at this link, okay? And it is actually called Spartans of Darkness. And it's about U.S. cryptologists. It was top secret. It's been declassified, obviously. And it's put out by the National Security Agency, a Central Security Service. And it was about basically cryptologists in the Vietnam War. Now, if we go to page 39, let's try and find it quickly here. And you can see a bunch of stuff is redacted. "39, where are you?" Well, 73, 57, sorry. I know you're like, get on with it. Okay, we see here the Vietnam supply routes. Okay, now it's not very clear there, so I'm going to show you another picture. But if you'll notice supply route 3, that is how he crossed over into China. Now, I'm going to back out of here, and we'll go back here. So now that would be on page 39. That was the Vietnamese supply lines. And notice route number 3, which I pointed out to you. And I'm going to show you here. Let's go down here. Heading northeast through Chao Bang. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing these places right. I tried to put it into a thing that shows you how to pronounce them, and it didn't work. So you're going to have to put up with my mangled English, I guess, or mangled Vietnamese in this case. Heading northeast through Chao Bang 2, and this is unmarked on the map, but it's Ban Giok waterfalls into China. And that's this. So let me make this a little bit bigger for you, so you'll at least have some hope of seeing it. And it would have been this route right here, supply route 3, that he took into China. So all right, let me make this a little bit smaller. Okay, come down here. Okay, Chao Bang to Ban Jiak waterfalls. One can blend in with tourists and ride a bamboo raft into China. Is this how Snowden entered China? Did he follow supply line border crossing 3? Well, according to Q, he says, "Welcome to China, border crossing 3." So it would seem that all the clues are within this post to tell us that Snowden is now in China, and I'm questioning whether he was ever in Russia. I don't know. But he is in China. All the clues are here, including he tells us where to look, Spartans of Darkness, and which is about U.S. cryptologists. And on 39, there's a map showing border crossing 3, and it's supply route 3 that crosses from Vietnam into China. So, I don't know. It seems reasonable to me. And just go down a little bit further. I've got another map. This one is just showing the Ban Jiak falls. I'm not sure how to pronounce this, and I'm not going to try. And below is the Vietnam-China map, and the red area is Chao Bang province in North Vietnam, and the gray area is China, and I'll show you that picture. So this area is all China, and this area is what province did they, hang on. It's Chao Bang province in North Vietnam. So that is the premise, is that he has crossed over into China somehow. So let's go on to the next one. Now that we know where he is for real, according to Q. Now, the next one says water. Now, hang on one second. Okay, it's I was just seeing if it was pointing to this one, and I think it was. So, water. And then he says, why is this event big? What does it signify? Why is North Korea out of the news? As the world turns. Q. Well, we have the luxury of knowing what posts are coming up in decoding this. And the water he is talking about is the water in the background of this picture, okay? But let me take you out somewhere and show you, because it's going to be coming up, and I want you to see a, okay. Notice in this first picture, notice the water in the background and how tumultuous it is. It's just absolutely raging. Those are some really, really tumultuous seas. It looks like it's during a tempest or something. And then you come down to this picture, and this is a recent picture that was taken right after the negotiations. And Q will make mention of Kim having his chest puffed out in a attitude, one final defiant attitude or defeat or whatever. I can't remember exactly how he phrased it, but it will be coming up in one of the posts. And look at the picture of the water here. The sun is setting. The waters are very, very calm. Just, it's a delightful picture. The skies is clear because you can see the sun setting, so it's not stormy. Now, when Q says, watch the water, apparently that's what he was talking about. Maybe one of the things he was talking about, because we know Q is very big on double meanings, and sometimes triple meanings. So anyway, we don't know for sure that is the sum totality of his warning to watch the water, but we do know that that's part of it, that he wants us to be aware of the water in the background because it's representative. It's representational of what's going on. So let's go back here. So the water in the background of the picture is what he's telling us to watch. And why is this event big? Well, this represents the negotiation that's just happened. It's been in the news. So obviously this was dropped before the news dropped. And, you know, what does it signify? Well, it signifies that a united Korea is in the works. And why is North Korea out of the news? Well, there's not been anything to report because the threats and everything have stopped and negotiations were ongoing. So what was there to report? As the world turns, Q. So why is this event big? Well, it's colossal, but let's go out and take a look. South Korean officials leave for U.S. with message from North Korea to Trump. South Korean.
Until recently, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's rule has been largely defined by military escalation.
Okay, I'm not gonna play that. Top Korean negotiators left for the United States Thursday to brief their American counterparts on the outcome of their historic meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un earlier this week. South Korean National Security Office head Chang Yo-young revealed few details of the trip as he boarded a plane at Seoul's Luncheon Airport for a brief airport for a brief two-day visit to Washington. Oh my gosh. The most urgent issue is to make sure the United States and North Korea will engage in talks, Chung said as he departed with National Intelligence Service Chief Soo Hoon. A White House official told CNN that Chung will meet U.S. National Security Advisor Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster at the White House Thursday afternoon. Afterwards, the South Korean delegation is expected to brief other senior officials from the U.S. government. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is out of the country on his first official trip to sub-Saharan Africa. The two diplomats recently returned to South Korea from an unprecedented meeting with North Korea's Kim in Pyongyang, believed to be the leader's first face-to-face talk with South Korean officials since he took power in 2011. Now, I'm not going to read all of this because it has been in the news. And yes, I realize that CNN is fake news, but in this case, they are reporting on something, and I think that we can pretty much, assume that this is what's happening because it corresponds with what Q is saying. Okay, let's go back. Let's look at this link. And this is the Korea Herald. Trump believes North Korea is sincere about talks after sanctions. Washington. U.S. President Donald Trump said Tuesday he believes North Korea is sincere about talking with the United States because of sanctions that were imposed on the regime. Trump appears to be taking credit for his administration's maximum pressure campaign, which has led to increased economic sanctions on Pyongyang over its nuclear weapons and ballistic missile programs. He was speaking after the North Koreans offered to discuss their nuclear weapons program with the United States. Now, that's huge in and of itself, that they're willing to discuss their nuclear weapons program with the United States. That's huge itself, but there's been far more developments after that. But, to go from where we were with North Korea to where we are right now it's astronomical. The odds of that happening by itself are astronomical. And we know that Trump is the one that should be taking credit for this. And he is. And he should. So, pretty amazing. I think that they are sincere, but I think they're sincere because of the sanctions with respect to North Korea, including the great help we've been by China, Trump said in a joint news conference with Swedish Prime Minister Stefan Löfven at the White House. The sanctions have been very strong and very biting. We don't want that to happen, so we're hoping they're sincere. We'll find out. Well, come to find out, they are sincere. And amazing things have been happening there. Amazing. So now I'm not going to go and read all this because, because I've been away for 3 days, this is already old news. So I'm not going to read it. Because it's, things have moved on and great things are happening. All right. So let's move on to the next. And then March 6th, Q says, watch the water again. And I think he's referring to 842. He's referring to this. He's referring to his own post down here. And he's saying, watch the water. The water's important because it tells us what is going on. And we went from all that, raging sea, that tumultuous, angry water, to this nice, calm, serene water at sunset, very placid. The skies, no clouds, no sign of a storm. Wonderful. Storm's over in North Korea, I would assume. Now, and this is just referring back to his own post there about the water. Now, he's referencing that picture that we just looked at with the calm background. And he writes, calm, tranquil, setting sun, dusk, peaceful end to the 70-year-old nightmare. No more division, no more fuse. Setting sun on the fake half of the hermit kingdom in a tranquil manner. Kim Boy looks beaten, puffing out his chest in the last act of defiance. That to me sounds like Trump. I could be wrong, but that just sounds like him. Kim Boy looks beaten, puffing out his chest in the last act of defiance. To me, that strikes me as Trump's humor. But again, I could be wrong. But I'll just show you this picture again. And here's Kim Boy, as he calls him. At least he's not calling him Rocket Man anymore. And I wouldn't say he looks completely, I don't know. It's hard to, these guys look happy. Well, maybe not him. He looks just kind of in shock, maybe. I don't know. And I'm not so sure he's puffing out his chest. I think he just has, a beer belly. Anyway. He could be puffing at his chest. Who knows? All right. Let's move on. So, let's down a little bit. I'm always trying to get the sweet spot here where it's big enough but small enough. Okay. So, yeah, he's describing this picture here, and I said see picture page 2, but the picture is down below there, so I won't go back to that other one. But the Democratic People's Republic of Korea was established in the North on 9th of September, 1948. I don't remember how to pronounce his name. Served as the first Soviet ambassador while Kim Il-sung became premier. North Korea is a country with a population of some 25 million people located on the northern half of the Korean peninsula between the East Sea of Japan, and the Yellow Sea, formerly known as the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or DPRK. It was founded in 1948 when the United States and the Soviet Union divided control of the peninsula after World War II. North Korea is a highly secretive communist state that remains isolated from much of the rest of the world. In recent years, leader Kim Jong-un and his aggressive nuclear program have posed a growing threat to international stability. And of course, we know that, but I wanted to just give you a little background on how it even formed in the first place, because if you'll remember at the end of World War II, that's what happened in Berlin as well. That's why Berlin was separated, and there was East Berlin and West Berlin, and East Berlin was run by the Soviets, and the rest was Western. And so, that's exactly what happened in Korea as well. So it split countries, and so the fact that they are talking about now reuniting and forming one country is amazing. So, seems to me there was another, I had something else here, but maybe not. Maybe not. Okay, so Q goes on and says, future proves past. You have so much more than you know. Biggest intel drop in our known history. Q. And he was referring to, I'm not sure, 563021. Not sure. Now, here we're getting into some interesting stuff. March 6th. Learn double meanings. News unlocks map. And by the map, he means his posts. His posts form the map, like Q's posts. And it may not be a he, it may be a she or a they. Why is steel so important? Well, as we're about to find out, of course, there's the Steele dossier, which is very important. But there's also Red October steel plant. Then he says, expand your thinking, and he gives us a link so that we will be able to know what he's talking about. So let's go look at the link. Well, this is a document by the Central Intelligence Agency. It's an information report. Let me get it bigger here. And this document contains information affecting the national defense of the United States within the meaning of Title 18, Section 793 and 794 of the U.S. Code as amended. Its transmission or revelation of its contents to or receipt by an unauthorized person is prohibited by law. The reproduction of this form is also prohibited. But of course, this has been approved for release and has been declassified. It says secret control, U.S. officials only, country, USSR, Stalingrad Oblast, subject, Red October steel plant in Stalingrad. This is the 28th of April, 1954. There's one page. And this is unevaluated information. The source evaluations in this report are definitive. The appraisals of content is tentative. For key, see reverse. And of course, we can't see the reverse. This is the only thing we can see. The Red October steel plant in Stalingrad was obliterated during World War II and was rebuilt by the Soviets before the war ended using such materials as they could obtain. The machinery is 25 years out of date, and the director of the factory admitted recently that some of the machines were 50 years old. The director added that a new rolling mill plant is going to be built as soon as possible. The plant contains 6 open hearth furnaces of the Siemens Martins type. The blooming mill machines, which are of German manufacture, bear the names Demag and Schulman. The blooming mill motors are made at an electrical factory in Leningrad. A recent visitor saw no evidence of electric furnaces at the steel plant. 2. Cleanliness in the factory is well below, and then it's been redacted, standards. Close to the factory is a plant club, which is extremely clean, containing a good theater, recreation rooms, library, canteens, and billiard rooms. The general standard was far in advance of similar clubs, and then it's been redacted. Those workers who have a good record for production have their photographs prominently displayed in various parts of the factory. In addition, there are bulletin boards in the factory on which are written the names of good and bad workers. All the cranes except the 50-ton crane used for handling liquid metal are operated by women. And that's all we have for this. So, obviously, Red October has been referring to a steel plant in Stalingrad, and it's basically below standard. It's behind the times still. It was mostly obliterated during World War II. So, okay, now that we've looked at what Q wants us to look at, let's go back. So, why is steel so important? Well, we're going to get into that as well, but for now, this is what he wants us to know, and of course the double meaning, steel dossier and steel plant. Now let's look at who the plant is owned by. Now, like today. And we have this in the world news, breaking news, Russia, USA World, battle for Red October. Who will get the largest plant of special steels? Steel worker at steel melting shop of the Volgograd metallurgical plant, Red October, early on the morning of 5th of April. Now this is from 2006. Early on the morning of the 5th of April, several buses of riot police entered the territory of the Volgograd factory Red October. Police took control of the inputs and outputs, and the investigation team had detention and seizure of documents. Just one day in Volgograd and Moscow were detained more than 10 employees of Red October, the source said, RBC in law enforcement. According to him, this has obviously been translated from another language into English. It's quite obvious to me. According to him, almost all were seized within 48 hours. The exception was the Deputy General Director of the trading house, Sergei Zatsipin, who was arrested for 2 months, reported TASS. 2 days later, on April 7th, the defendant in a criminal case of embezzlement of the credit of VTB for $65.5 million, the institution of GUMVD in Moscow on the complaint of VTB Bank became the owner of the plant, Dmitry Gerasimenko. Information about presentation of charges against him is in the materials of the, I cannot pronounce that, Court of Moscow hearing of the petition of the investigation. He, Gerasimenko, with the end of 2015, is in Switzerland. So this is very hard to read, extremely hard to read here because of the language difference. But so basically there were riot police that entered, and there was some sort of it was a criminal case of embezzlement, $65.5 million. And the owner of the plant was Dmitry Gerasimenko. And prior to that, Red October belonged to the Swiss International. And according to the Swiss registry, Gerasimenko is the president of the Swiss company. But investigators believe the owner of Red October, and this is confirmed by himself, Gerasimenko, and the representative of the plant. See, it's very, very hard to read this because it's been transferred into English, so it's kind of, guessing what they're meaning. Just 1 second. But I guess Gerasimenko himself and the Swiss are agreeing that he is the owner and representative of the plant, but it was owned by this company, Swiss International. The businessman denies the charges and claims that the criminal case was fabricated and the search coincided with a persistent proposal to rewrite the business. So, I don't know, but there's something funny going on there, obviously. So, let's see what else it says down here. We know that there's $65.5 million of some sort of theft or embezzlement. But I'm not exactly sure what's going on here. And okay, what are they fighting? Red October, one of Russia's largest plants for the production of special steels, founded in 1897, produces more than 670 steel grades. On the website of the company states that its market shares of the stainless steel is more than 50%. Special steels are used mainly in the automotive and aviation industry, chemical, oil, and gas industries used for the production of armor. The revenue of GSC WMZ Red October in 2012, after that the plant properly was leased to other entities, amounted to 11.2 billion rubles, net loss 797 million rubles. So anyway, when you purchase the Red October, I can't pronounce that, continued to buy up steel plants. The main source of investment were loans, which were laid under the property of Red October. But plans foiled the crisis, according to two former executives. I'm going to have to look into this more because there's a lot here. But because of this being translated from probably German into English, it reads very, very rough, and it's hard to really ascertain what's going on. So I'm going to look more into this, but there's obviously some huge scandal here with Red October Steel, and it's going to tie into some other things. I really believe that. So I'm gonna look into that further, and I'll probably post it as a separate video called Red October Steel Plant. But that takes too much looking into it for us to really ascertain right now exactly what it is. We just know that it's something, and I'll show you what it's tied to when we get to it. Okay, now the next one, we get a link, and then we get, well, he says learn, and then he gives us a link. So obviously he wants us to go out here, and that's what he wants us to learn. And it's about Nazis, the Vatican, and the CIA. And I'm sure any of us that have been awake longer than 5 minutes know about the Nazis, the Vatican, and the CIA. And now it was interesting for me to see this covert action information bulletin, because when I was writing my book, I actually sent away and paid for photocopies from several of these publications, because I was looking into the Iran-Contra scandal and how it was tied to evangelicals. And so I was I read several of these, and this happened to be one of them that I read because it had the Knights of Malta in it. And I'm going to just read this to you because it'll tell you what the whole thing is about. This issue of Covert Action Information Bulletin focuses on the fascist connection, in particular the U.S. role in helping hundreds, perhaps thousands, of prominent Nazis avoid retribution at the end of World War II. The CIA, originally the OSS, and the U.S. military, along with the Vatican, were instrumental in infiltrating war criminals, not just to Latin America, but to the United States as well. As the Reagan administration attempted to rewrite history, it is worthwhile to examine carefully the wartime and post-war machinations of the extreme right. The president goes to Bitburg claiming it is time to forgive and forget, when in reality he is cutting a crude political deal with the reactionary West German government for its approval of Star Wars by giving his absolution to the SS. Harboring war criminals. As we demonstrate in the pages of this issue, war criminals like Joseph Mengele and Walter Roth and Klaus Barbie did not simply vanish at the end of the war or gracefully retire, and I think most of us know that. Most of them spent several years in the direct employ of the U.S. intelligence agencies and, when necessary, were set up in business in Latin America or the U.S. The I'm not sure how to pronounce that. The Nazi Old Boy Network remained active over the years, vigorous enough to have planned and carried out the 1980 coup in Bolivia, for example, and to have held high places in Pinochet's government in Chile. And they are major figures in the international arms and drug trades as well, traffic which the U.S. tries to blame on the socialist countries. Hundreds of Nazis have been set up in scientific institutions in this country. Ironically, it now appears that Star Wars is merely an extension of the Nazis' wartime rocket research. Much of the U.S. space program was designed by them. When the Justice Department's Office of Special Investigations learned that the scientist responsible for the Apollo 11 moon trip, Arthur L. H. Rudolph, was a war criminal who exploited slave laborers to their deaths in his Nazi rocket factory, he was allowed to depart the U.S. voluntarily with no prosecution and no public announcement until he was safely back in West Germany. Rudolph was only one of thousands of fascist scientists, doctors, technicians, above all, intelligence operatives, as simulated after World War II. Only slowly and with painstaking research does the information surface. And so in this issue, we've got MK Ultra, CBW, not sure what that stands for. And torture, Eleni and the Greek Civil War, the World Anti-Communist League. Ooh, I looked into that a lot. That was the covert wars, and Knights of Malta. Ooh, that's a big one. How Allen Dulles and the SS preserved each other. So there's a lot of things in here about the CIA and about their not so lily white operations, covert operations. So that would be the if I was to sum this all up, that's what it's about. It's about undercover CIA operations that were not above board at all. And of course, we had the Vatican and the rat lines, is what they called them, where they smuggled out Nazis as well. So, and of course, the Knights of Malta were involved in that as well, involved in the rat lines. So, let's go back here. So this is what Q wants us to know, that the CIA has had a long history of these types of operations. And he says learn. Because I think for most people, they don't want to believe that their government is involved in anything unsavory. In fact, I think that is the hardest pill for people to swallow, is when they find out about all these things that the government has been involved in through the CIA and FBI, but mainly the CIA. And it's the same in Canada. When you start looking into things that have actually gone on, it's mind-boggling, because people want to think that the government is out for their good. They're good. They want to take care of the people. They want to do what's best and make decisions in people's best interest. And that's not the case. And then when you find out that, gosh, they experiment on people without their knowledge and, all these things, it almost... I think that for people that are unstable, it would be enough to send them over the edge. I really do. And I think that that's why Q said at the very beginning that, gosh, if you knew everything, most of you would be in the hospital. Because this stuff is it's too much for the average person to process. So let's continue. Now, here... Here, okay, up here we've got a an anon posting up here, and he posts that picture of that Central Intelligence Agency report on the Red October steel plant, okay? And he puts underneath, Red October steel plant. And Q says, is responding to him or her, and says, why was the hunt for removed? Expand your thinking. Not related to money or trade. The map has everything. News, tweets, unlock the map. Q. Well, I think the hunt for Red October was removed because they found whatever they were looking for. Because when you stop hunting for something, it's no longer a hunt. It's just Red October. Instead of saying it's the hunt for Red October. So there's something that's been originating there that we need to pay attention to, I would think. And he's saying expand your thinking. Now, Expand Your Thinking is also a book, and the book is actually about expanding your thinking, oddly enough. And I want to get that book and read it, because I think honestly that is what Q is talking about when he says expand your thinking. So there's something even in that. It's like everything that he writes is for a reason. And he says it's not related to money or trade. Well, if it's not related to money or trade, what is it related to? I don't know. The map has everything. News, tweets, unlock the map. Q. So this is still ongoing research, and I don't know that I have any answers that are of any consequence at all in this, and it'll take continued research on my part and other people's parts. And you know what? I've been so busy over the last few days, I haven't looked. Maybe there's other people that have unlocked that. I'm going to hope that there are, and I will look. I didn't find anything when I looked, but that doesn't mean anything. Now, here's an interesting little post. An anonymous poster posts this, and he is reposting this tweet back from November 14th, 2017, that was tweeted by Trump, and it is a picture taken out of the Air Force One, and it says, "Thank you, Asia," and then this anonymous user is asking, did anyone saw this in the video? And he means, of course, did anyone see this in the vid? And then this was the whole post by Q. He said, isn't that curious? What's below Q? Then another user responds and says, also, 111 days before Monday was this. Did we decide it was North Korea? And Q responds to this and is referring to this and says, do you think the Asia Live OP posted was for nothing? Equals Q. Now, that's a little bit it's a little bit confusing as to what he means by that, but I think Q is saying, do you think that this was posted, this picture of outside of the out of Air Force One, out of the window of Air Force One over Asia, and it was determined to be over Asia, do you think that was posted for nothing? And of course it wasn't, because everything that Trump does is for a reason. Everything that Q posts is for a reason. And a lot of the posts between Q and the posts between Trump coincide with one another, and we know that. So then we have this. March 6th, Q writes, is the stage set for a drop of Hillary Rodham Clinton +++, space plus, space plus 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 plus. Raw video 555 X RVID 5574. Now, we know there is a video of Huma and Hillary having sex with a 15-year-old child. And how do we know that? I said that a long time ago, and people poo-pooed me. I love that word, poo-pooed. Anyway, they poo-pooed me because they said, oh, there's no evidence of that and whatever. But there was they seized Wiener's laptop. And on that laptop were a whole bunch of things, all sorts of pornography and videos and all sorts of nasty, nasty things. Well, this law enforcement officer said that they had a tape of Huma and Hillary having sex with a 15-year-old child. And I was expecting it to come out. Well, it's never come out. And someone said this stands for "and a child." I don't know. I don't see how you would possibly get that, except that the spaces coincide with that. But it could be any number of things really that would fit into those. So I don't know. I don't go along with that, it being Hillary Rodham Clinton and a child. It could be, but I just really doubt it. I think that it is Hillary and Huma having sex with a 15-year-old child. That's what I think, because we know that there is a video of that somewhere. So Q is saying we have it all. So Q is now saying that's, whatever video that is, and this may be the number of the video, that could be the something, I don't know, but it's a raw video, and there's 5.5 minutes of it, perhaps. That's what it's saying. I hope it's not 5 hours. Even 5 minutes would be too much for me. Anyway, and so he's saying we have it all. Q is letting us know that they have that video. It was found on Wiener's laptop. And then he says, reread regarding stage. And I know that Q has said many times the stage is set and so forth. I'm not exactly sure what he is meaning here. If any of you, if that triggers something in you and please put it in the comments below. Then below here he says, the nail in many coffins, liberal undo. So this will put the nail in many coffins because it will be impossible to defend. How could you defend that? She's able to lie and manipulate and pay her way out of trouble in other things. But if you had a video of Hillary having sex with an underage child, how do you explain that away? You can't. You just can't. You can't explain that away. And it's going to be the nail in many coffins, because it's going to be impossible for all of the Democrats, all of these people that have supported Hillary. What are they going to do? Guilty by association. So if they start defending her, people are going to think, well, gee, maybe we should look at you. If you think this is okay, maybe we should look into your background. So it's going to be toxic to any of those connected to her in any way. So impossible to defend, toxic to those connected. And Q says, we must work together. We are only as strong as your voice. You must organize and be heard. This is why they keep you divided and in the dark, weak. We are here to unite and provide truth, dark to light. Evil surrounds us. We are fighting for you. Where we go one, we go all. The choice to know will be yours. And now I believe what he's saying is, in the end, it's going to be our choice whether we want to know the truth or not. But the truth is going to all be out there. It's going to all be out there for anybody that wants to see it. But it's going to be people's choice, because as you and I both know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Or you can lead people to knowledge, but you can't make them think. And the knowledge can all be there, but We can't make them look at it and assimilate it. So there are some that will say, no, I'm not looking at that garbage. It was all put out by the Russians. It was whatever. Trump made all that up. Whatever they're going to say. And so there'll be some that look and assimilate it, and their eyes will be open, and they'll wake up and they'll realize the nature of the fantasy land we've been living in. And there's others that will continue living that way because it's too uncomfortable. It's too uncomfortable to know the truth. There are women that stay with men that are pedophiles or rapists, and you know why? It's too uncomfortable to face the truth. So they keep letting all these inconsistencies go by them, because if they were to really open their eyes and know the truth, it would be far too uncomfortable for them. So it's the same thing. It's the same thing here. But in the end, it's going to be our choice. Okay, let's go on to this one. March 6th. Now, he says 1 of 5, 2 of 5. And I'm not exactly sure what this is right here. I'm going to have to go back and look that up, because it seems to me, I looked into it, but now I can't remember what it was or what it refers to. Anyway, excuse me. What if something, okay, this is where we're getting into the whole steel thing. What if the steel used for military grade projects was made inferior by our enemies as a method to weaken? Wow. When I saw this, I was like, wow. That's huge. That is absolutely, massively huge. What Q is saying here, because if he's asking the question, then that's what was done. Steel was used for military grade products that was intentionally made inferior by our enemies. And that was done in order to weaken us. Wow. Now, what if Hussein knew and authorized? Okay, well, this is the second big bomb drop here. Because obviously Q's saying it was made inferior, and that Obama knew that it was inferior, and he still authorized it. Wow. Talk about treason. Like that. I mean, it's not unbelievable to me, because Obama's involved. And I think I would believe anything to do with Hillary or Obama. But it's just, wow. Renegade. Now, Renegade was Obama's nickname by the SS, by the Secret Service. So that's what he's referring to then. Then he says, Q says, how many Marines volunteered to serve Hussein during his term? Well, apparently none. None volunteered. They had to be elected. Why? Well, there are claims that more than 13,000 Marines applied for White House detail after President Trump was elected. There's claims that, sorry, I don't know what I was thinking when I wrote that, claims that no Marines applied for White House duty during President Obama's 8 years in office. Now, whether this is true or not, I don't know, but that's what the claims are that are out there. And I wouldn't doubt that. I wouldn't doubt it at all, that no Marines applied for White House duty during President Obama's 8-year term. And it wouldn't surprise me that 13,000 Marines applied for White House detail after President Trump was elected, because they knew that he was for the Constitution. So, interesting. Now, what if his name we don't say, which is McStain or McCain, organized the deal? Okay, so Q is saying steel was used for military-grade products that was intentionally made inferior by our enemies in order to weaken us. Obama knew about this and authorized it anyways. Then McCain organized the deal. Ooh, I wouldn't want to be those guys. The U.S. taxpayer subsidizes the world. America has been sold to the highest bidder. America has been weakened on purpose. The depths of their treason is unimaginable. Pure evil. Hell on earth. HRC victory. What he is saying there is, if Hillary Rodham Clinton had gotten in, it would have been hell on earth. And I believe that with every ounce of my being. So let's go take a look at this link. And I wanted to show you this because, of course, steel has been in the news and everything because of Trump putting tariffs on it. And it's interesting because this article from the Financial Post, why President Trump is on the right side of the steel trade war. And I didn't realize all of this until I started reading this. But he's brilliant. Seriously, when you start to get into some of the things he's done, he's brilliant. The world is awash in excess steel capacity, and the global market is being flooded with surplus production. See, I didn't know that. China is purposefully flooding the market with steel. While all the world's trading nations, by deploying a free trade ideological war machine that reaches back to Adam Smith, gang up on Donald Trump over his plans to impose steel and aluminum tariffs, here's a question. Where have all these nations been over the past decade as the world's steel industry spiraled into a massive overcapacity crisis? President Trump and his mercantilist economic advisors may be spouting economic heresies in the threat to use tariff walls to stop the flow of steel and aluminum imports into the United States. As we have been incessantly reminded by international economic, legal, and political commentators over the past few days, Trump's tariffs would produce higher prices for American consumers and the risk of a global trade war. Trump may also be flouting World Trade Organization rules. All that may be true, but that's not much help in understanding that when it comes to steel, Trump and the U.S. are on the right side of the trade war. A trade war is bad, but Trump is not the villain. He may, in fact, become the hero of the global economy if his actions can get the world's steel-producing nations to do what they have so far refused to do: find a way to reduce global steel production capacity. From the G20 to the OECD and the EU, from Canada's House of Commons to U.S. trade officials, and on to Communist Party leaders in Beijing, steel has been the subject of constant bureaucratic and political hand-wringing, consultations, conventions, forums, and other talk and report fests for most of the last decade. The world is awash in excess steel capacity. Nobody wants to act alone. Steel has also been a nationalist, subsidized and protected industry in many countries for most of the past 100 years, a status that's been hard to shake. The recent crisis was triggered in 2008 economic collapse, which saw steel demand plunge. As demand recovered after 2008, the global capacity to produce steel soared, most of it in China. The usual snapshot statistic shows 2016 steelmaking capacity of 2,369 million metric tons compared with demand of 1,628 million metric tons rather. The gap implies more 700 million metric tons of excess capacity, equal to almost double the combined annual steel production of all North America, Japan, and the EU. The 700 million metric ton world steel capacity production gap has grown from 542 million metric tons in 2012, the year the European Commission launched its action plan for a competitive steel industry. Since then, the OECD has been at the forefront of attempts to resolve the growing capacity problem. 2 years ago, the OECD, at a high-level meeting on the issue, warned that the global steel industry is currently in the midst of a serious crisis that is leading to considerable trade disturbances and escalating tensions between trading partners. As demand declined, world steel exports continued to rise. In response, the OECD said governments have resorted to measures including import duty increases, government subsidies, and other support measures, export incentives, trade finance, investment measures, import quotas, minimum import prices, and surveillance mechanisms. While these support measures might provide temporary relief, they do not provide long-lasting solutions to help the industry and can lead to further trade tensions between steel trading partners. In early 2016, the European Commission ordered Belgium to recover 211 million euros in illegal state aid that artificially boosted revenues of local steelmakers and had the effect of postponed capacity reduction in the Walloon steel industry. The Belgium crackdown was a warning to other nations, although how much state aid for steel remains buried in EU economic policy is unknown. At the G20 following summits in China and Hamburg, a group called the Global Forum on Steel Excess Capacity was established. In a November 2017 report, although 50 pages of trade bureaucraties, the forum outlined a slew of proposed measures and voluntary commitments to reduce capacity and stop subsidies and other programs. The G20, in effect, had no power to do anything. In the future, the Global Forum will meet 3 times a year to further discuss, assess, and review the situation. The priority through 2018, when further meetings are planned in connection with the G20 summit in Argentina, Steel Forum members should swiftly and fully apply the agreed principles and recommendations. In Ottawa, a House of Commons Trade Committee report last June warned Canada's steel industry can compete globally, but only on a level playing field. The committee said the global excess steelmaking capacity and the resulting dumping of foreign products into the country have hurt Canadian steel producers. It is difficult, if not impossible, for Canadian steel producers to compete with companies exporting their products to Canada at prices that do not reflect market forces. For these reasons, the committee notes the importance of an effective, fair, and accessible trade remedy system for all stakeholders in Canadian steel industry. So not only are they flooding the market with, steel, but it sounds to me like some of that steel is purposefully made inferior. Anyway, the world is awash in excess steel capacity, and the global market is being flooded with surplus production. Nobody wants to act alone. China claims to be working to reduce its capacity. The EU has warned Trump not to raise tariffs after it raised duties on steel from Brazil, Iran, Russia, and the Ukraine. What Trump may have done, to the horror of free trade purists, but for the benefit of all, is raise the global steel crisis from its mired position within the EU, OECD, G20 machinery and brought it to the attention of the outside world. Interesting. So, that's what our president is doing, and I think it's wonderful. I don't pretend to know all the ins and outs of the steel industry and what the problem really is, except that it's quite easy to understand that there is a glut of steel, and it's affecting everyone. And possibly he's saying, Q is saying that a lot of that steel is purposefully being made inferior. So, let's go on. Now I may stop I think I'm going to just do this next one and then I'm going to stop and continue on from there with a new video, just because this is getting really long. But let's take a look here, because Q posted this. Do you believe in coincidences? Only the beginning. Now, this outlines an article, and there are 500 companies that are affected by this fraud. And it's, hang on here. And it happens to be a steel. Kobe Steel Limited admitted on Tuesday its data fraud has been going on nearly 5 decades and also revealed new cases of cheating, highlighting the challenges facing the 112-year-old company mired in compliance failures and malfeasance. Japan's third biggest steelmaker, said its CEO will step down to take responsibility for the widespread data fraud scandal that came to light last year, although doubts remain over its corporate culture and the possibility of future fines. Kobe Steel, which supplies steel parts to manufacturers of cars, planes, and trains around the world, admitted last year to supplying products with falsified specifications to about 500 customers, throwing global supply chains into turmoil. The company, in announcing the results from a 4-month-long investigation by an external committee, said it had also found new cases of impropriety, widening the total of affected clients to 605, including 222 customers overseas. So I'm not going to read all of this, but this is just basically, being pointed out by Q that here is another case of fraud involved with a steel company. So this is obviously not, just one or two companies. There's something big going on here with the steel industry, and that's what Q is bringing to our attention. So it's not just the steel dossier that is important in all this Q stuff, but it's also the steel industry itself. And there is going to be a tie-in. You can just about bet that there's going to be a tie-in. Well, there already is with Obama, but you can bet that there's a tie-in with Hillary too. I just about guarantee it. So that's that. I'm going to end this here and start with the next video and upload that later this afternoon. So I will bid you adieu for now, and I will see you guys later, and thank you so much for listening.